I'm Paula Kettler. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I hosted the Becoming a Peaceful Parent Summit. I am doing a 5-day parenting boot camp right now. And just, I'm here to support parents in whatever way I can. And one message that I heard, like we said, is this needing help around homeschool. So we're going to be talking about that today. We have about an hour together. Danelle Weintal. Danelle, can you wave your hand so everybody sees
Hello,
you?
everybody. Nice to meet you.
She is a good friend of mine. She is a colleague, and we always get into very spirited conversations around education and children and how the school system could do such better job with that. And she really has real life experience in homeschooling her daughter. And so she's gonna really like pour everything that she knows into. She's gonna talk about the fears and concerns and worries around homeschooling, as well as give you some tips like how to build the homeschool environment, how to create activities that are based on the whole brain. And like a deeper way of learning than just doing like some, spreadsheets. Let me add some people here. We are going to also talk about the importance of following the passions of the child. We know this, that learning happens the best way when the child is actually interested in what they are learning. So we know this from learning sciences, and we learn this how kids learn is just the way, whatever they are interested. So that's why educational models that really follow this are so impactful, because children really get to focus on whatever they are whatever they feel like they are open to learn at that point. How to think creatively and outside the box, and how to take advantage of resources and get support from people who have already walked through this path. So we're going to talk about all that first, and then we will open into Q&A at the end. If everybody could mute, let me go through this list here a little bit, and we will make sure that you will get your questions answered. There is that chat box. You are welcome to kind of interact and connect and chat with each other as we go through this discussion. So that is the plan for today. So yeah, Danelle, why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is your experience and your journey in homeschooling?
I'd be happy to. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. And I'm super excited to just be in this with all of you. We're kind of all thrown in this insane situation together and figuring out our way through it. Can everybody hear me okay? So,
yeah, wave your hand if you can hear, Danelle.
Or just
yep, awesome. Yeah, thumbs up or something. Great.
Yeah, so I'm Danelle, as Paula said, and I'm an educational kinesiologist and a brain gym consultant. And I also work with parents in consulting, particularly with homeschooling, because it's so individual for everybody. And there's just a million ways to navigate your way through it. So I sort of specialize in helping parents navigate their way through in a way that suits their particular family, since we're all so different. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I'm here to hope that you will find some ease at home while you're going through all of this. And I'm just kind of curious while we get started, and then I'm going to tell you about myself. But as a community, I kind of feel like we all have like ideas about education and what they are, and what ideas about learning and that type of thing. So just for a minute, when you think of the word education, just think about for a minute what comes to your mind. So as we have like kind of our specific ideas about what that might be, I'm hoping that today will kind of alleviate some of the stressors you might have, or preconceived ideas that you have, to kind of open up that there may be other ways of doing what you're doing that can cause the ease that you need, especially right now with all the stress that we're all under. So I'm going to get into the concerns and fears, but I'm going to go ahead and explain about myself a little bit now, as Paula, requested. And while I'm doing that, go ahead and feel free to put in the chat boxes your concerns and your fears. Okay. So I'm just, like, how many here are feeling that you're not equipped to handle the situation? You can give me like a thumbs up or thumbs down, or if you're comfortable, or you don't have to do anything at all. But how many of you
can do that, and also like write it in the chat too. So Danelle, I'll keep an eye on the chat as well.
Yeah. How many are feeling like you're not equipped? Or how about how many of you are worrying that your children are going to get behind? Or maybe just really frustrated that you're kind of thrown into this situation that you had no control over, right? So like I said, I'm Danelle, and I have 3 children. Out of my 3 children, one of them was homeschooled. My other 2 were traditionally schooled. But my youngest, who's now 22, in kindergarten, about halfway through kindergarten, when I started to realize that she was falling between the cracks, that she was not being recognized for who she was. It just was not a good fit. Just a little background about her personality. And by the way, I got her permission to talk about her today, because I wouldn't talk about her without her permission. She said, yeah, I told her what I was going to say. She was fine with it. She just happens to be kind of a self-learner individual anyway. And she completely taught herself to read. We read books, but I wasn't cramming reading down her throat. It just wasn't the way we did things. But she taught herself to read by age 4. And in kindergarten, they were saying she was behind in everything. And I kept asking myself, why is she doing these things at home, but not doing them in the classroom? And I'm not blaming the classroom at all. It's just she was not a good fit for that classroom for whatever reason. And she was in a school with very high scores. It's a good school, but for who she was, it just was not meeting her learning needs. So I thought, okay, I'm early childhood trained. I'll pull her out of kindergarten. It's not mandatory. And then I'm going to have to figure out what to do. So I pulled her out. I did not plan on homeschooling her. It was not part of our intention. I had things I was doing. I was going to write a book. I had all these things on my plate that I was going to do when she started kindergarten. So I got involved with the homeschool community so we would have a connection with people until I figured out what to do with this situation, because it wasn't working. Her self-esteem was going down. A lot of things were happening that just were not working for her there. But she started to thrive. We got involved with the homeschool community, and she just started thriving and thriving and thriving. At the end of every school year around spring, I would be in freak out mode. What am I doing? I'm living my life outside the box. I don't know anybody else really who's doing this except this little group of people that I've started to get to know. I've never done this before, and what's going to happen to her? Is she going to get behind? Am I going to mess her up for life? I just, about springtime, I'm going to look into schools again, and I'd just be grappling. Are we doing it right? How do we change it? And this would go on every year for the first years till I finally could acknowledge that she was thriving, and that's what really mattered. And she was learning, and that's what really mattered. And although she learned very differently from my boys who were traditionally schooled, they now all grown, I can say they are all fine. None of them are behind in life. All of them have their life in their individual ways. And they did learn differently, and they did get there differently. But halfway through, I started to find ease. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I have great ease because everybody's there. So now I hope that gives you a little idea of where I'm coming from. I also want to say that I know that my homeschooling experience, very different from yours. I chose to homeschool, and I could have chosen any minute to not homeschool. I could have said, no, you're going back to school. This isn't working. You don't have that luxury right now. We don't know how long this is going to last. You have different things to grapple with than I did. My grappling was all on me to figure out what's next, and you're needing to grapple with what to do. Plus, you're needing to deal with whatever the school is asking you to do, and you're having now all these things to manage. And so my hat, first of all, goes off to you, because this is a lot. Not to mention that I will say some of you might be working from home or working outside still the home and dealing with all those issues. I don't know. Every situation's different. And you have to manage your way through all of that. So in that respect, I'm here for you in any way I can be with the school situation. I can definitely help you with these things. So think of me if you need to. I'm of service to you. I'd love to get to your concerns, Paula. Are there any concerns that people have written that might be good to address?
Yeah, okay, let's start with taking a couple of concerns here. So, so you can feel free to write those in the chat. You know, one is feeling very frustrated and ill-equipped to teach a very defiant child. So that's one thing that is coming up, is this defiance, opposition, no, I don't want to do that. And what I've also noticed, like, you know, when I ask parents, like, well, how was your child when they were in school? And usually they were fine, and now there's a different environment and kids are just struggling with that. So let's maybe start with that. Like, you know, what are some ideas, like when a kid is just defiant, doesn't want to do the work, is getting aggressive in some cases? Maybe you could speak to that for a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I just want to say that every child is going to react to this differently, and there's going to be some children who are going to just get right in there and they're going to sit down and do what is asked of them, and some that aren't. And it is going to be different at home. And even if for people who choose to homeschool, you're going to deal with some of these things when you're choosing to. And you can't, you know, make them do these things, and you're frustrated with all these things. The thing is that if they don't get it perfect on that day, the rest of their life is not going to fall apart. They're grappling with all these things too. And your role with them has not been sit down and do your work. Your role with them has been completely different, other than maybe when they have to do their homework. So everybody's adapting to this. Some parents who choose homeschooling because the school's not working out, and a child has been in school for, let's say, a certain number of years, and now they're chose to homeschool for some reason, they go through a huge transition of what's going to happen and what's going to take place and what the rules are and what the roles are. And I would say take a breath with it. And you may have to have, the teachers. I'll say one thing real quick. I did this week, took time, I called every teacher I know, and just to pick their brain about what they're grappling with this. And they're grappling with the same things you are, figuring out what to do. They told me to tell you they're doing their best. I would strongly suggest if it doesn't work that day, you're supposed to sit down and do X, Y, Z, and you really can't make it happen. Okay, you couldn't make it happen that day. You're just gonna have to tell the teacher we're struggling and we're figuring out how to make this work at home, and we haven't done it yet. It may take us some time. There has to be some forgiveness for all of us within this, time of adapting, because it isn't gonna just fall together in a beautiful little place. And even the children who adapt to it much quicker, they're going to have good days and bad days. This is going to all be just a time of kind of accepting that it's not going to be perfect. But in 10 years from now, like if you close your eyes right now and your kids are 10 years older than right now, this is going to be a different set of learning experiences. Mm-hmm. They're still learning. Maybe they're getting to their assignments in a different way, or it's more tumultuous, whatever it is, there's still other kinds of learning taking place here. I mean, think of everything they're learning about the dynamics of getting through trouble when they're involved with the family. So I would say take a breath and keep working with it, keep working at it, and no, it's not going to be perfect, and be open with the teachers, and don't beat yourself up if it's doesn't fall exactly right. you'll keep working at it piece by piece.
Right. Great, great. Thank you so much. So that's such a powerful message, is kind of, what I've been talking to a lot of parents about, like, just letting go a little bit, going with the flow. Communicating with the teachers is so important. Like Janelle, you said, I hear a lot of parents getting in between, like, okay, well, the school is requiring this, but then I see meltdowns and stuff happening at my home that's not working for my child. So do I follow what the school is requiring, or do I do what's the best for my child and my home?
Yeah.
So I think those are good points of communicating with the teacher. This is not working. And like Janelle said, just, if it's not going to get done, it's not going to get done that day. 10 years from now, that math assignment that caused a major tantrum and meltdown is not going to matter. It's not going to matter. So, and a lot of forgiveness and compassion, self-compassion, kindness, and self-care, like Janelle was talking about. Let me look at maybe, Janelle, do you want to take another concern here before we move on?
Let's take one more.
Let's take one more. Okay. Let me go through the chat here. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so somebody says, they are brand new foster parents and not sure what is the best way to get the children to learn. So what are some best ways that children learn? I think that's a really good question. And I think there's a lot of discussion about this out there. And I know you feel passionately about this, Janelle. I feel super passionately about this. I'm actually to a point, like, I'm just going to start my own preschool and do it the way it's supposed to be done, versus what I kind of see is being done with the traditional school system that is in many cases not working. So please tell us, what is the best way for children to learn, and maybe breaking it into developmental stages too, because it looks a little different at different ages. So kind of like a Cliff's Note summary of the main points. What are the best ways for children to learn?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for it. Early childhood, maybe like ages, and this is very general because every child is just so different, but generally ages 0 to 8, early childhood learning is best done through the senses and through movement and the sensory. That, everybody all throughout life learns through their senses: what you see, what you hear, what you touch, how you give and take information. It's all a sensory experience, and that's how you learn. And it's really important to have movement involved in learning. And for all the ages, a ground up learning, whole brain learning from the ground up is really important. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you're using your senses. It means that you're in motion, and it means that whatever's happening, you're figuring it out from scratch, basically. And one of the activities we're going to get into will be a perfect example of that. So from 0 to 8, really their work is play. That's what's developing the brain the most, is play. And so whatever environment they're in, when you're looking at them and they're playing, you can put a big smile on your face and say, oh, my child's learning right now. And they're really developing the parts of the brain that bring in those skills for later, for all the things that they need to do. I'm not in any way putting down formal learning or anything like that. Those are also ways to learn. But developmentally, that's how a young child's brain works the best. And as everybody gets older, they get into the more critical thinking and the more abstract thinking. So you're going to want to give them things that do give them that opportunity to continue to develop that brain from that primitive part up to the frontal lobe, where they're in that more logical thinking. So you're going to want to give them things to do that are developing that. And that's kind of my cliff note about it. And later, if you have more questions of activities that develop up, and we can't get to that today, you can contact me about those things.
Great. Thank you, Janelle. Yes, thank you. And yeah, we'll make sure that everybody has, your contact information. And I really, really resonated with something you said, Janelle, which is that child's play is their work. So we need to take it seriously in some ways. Sometimes when we look at child, oh, they're just playing, but this playing is actually so precious. It's so important. So just know that when you, like Danelle said, when your child is playing, smile, be joyous, be happy about that, because your child is actually learning. They're learning about the world, how the world works, a lot of play with different toys and characters, so puppets. That's also all social emotional learning happening right there. So I want you to really hear that, because if you feel like, well, my child is playing and it's not doing their schoolwork, well, they're playing and they're actually learning, right?
Yes.
So great. And that then there is, like Danelle said, there is a shift later on, 8 years and up, where the learning looks a little bit different. So in usually it is at this point the more like abstract thinking comes online. This is when we can start doing more worksheets and focused learning. So the 0 to 8 is just, it's free, it's playing, it's a lot of absorbing what's going on in the world around us. Great. Thank you so much for all those questions. And Danelle, maybe we can move on next to like more of those things you had planned, like maybe talking a little bit about wherever you want to start, whether it's how to set up the environment, or if you have some of those activities you can share with us, and then we'll do some more questions later on.
Sounds perfect. So before getting into the activities, I want to briefly mention something about stress and the brain.
Yes.
I'm also an educational kinesiologist, and when I was in college, my heart passion was, what's happening with my brain when I move. I'm very, very fascinated by movement in the brain. And through all my studies, I've really discovered the importance of what does happen to the brain and moving in our body when we're under stress. So right now, all of you, all of us, everybody in the world really are under a tremendous amount of stress. And now we have this big change you're having to try to figure out with your schooling. And so these children are trying to learn while they're under a tremendous amount of stress. And the families are trying to work while they're under a tremendous amount of stress. So I just want to real quickly say that when you are under that much stress, your brain basically stops working fully. The information stops flowing. So at that moment when your child's at the computer or at their Zoom class or having an assignment, and in that moment, meltdown, they cannot do it, they're not learning anyway. If they're that much under stress, you don't retain information. So that is the time to step away, and you can get into some of the activities I'm talking about right now, and then later come back to the more structured learning. So the first activity I want to give you, and this is more early childhood, and I'm going to give you other ideas too. And your children may already have done this automatically, but this is definitely ground up work with a lot of brain stuff going on. An obstacle course. I mean, what happens when you're in your house and you throw pillows, blankets, boxes, stay away from new boxes. We don't, with this virus, right? Any old boxes that we know are safe. Anything from around your house, bins, but make sure you have no lids for the bins. Chairs, anything that, right? Somebody just said that her kids did this all week and it was a mess, but it was fun. Exactly. But take with you that not only is it fun, they're learning. There's math, there's science, there's problem solving. If you can adjust your thinking a little bit about what their activities are and what they automatically gravitate towards. Remember, they're gravitating towards these things because they know what their brain needs to learn. And so with the obstacle course, you don't need to do it for them. I'm sure that maybe this mom can reiterate the fact that they take this ball and they run with it, and they could do it for a minute or 5 minutes or an hour or days. It just depends on your child and the situation. And yeah, there's a mess at the end of it, but that gave you time to do your work, to take a breath. It's really just a beautiful, beautiful, perfect thing. And there's learning, people, so relax and know your child, that brain is at work in that moment. They're not doing structured work, but their brain is working, okay? So relax with that. I'll give you a couple more. What can you do? You're doing things around the house. I just want to say that everything I'm going to give you today, there's little or no prep time to it. Nothing you have to go out and buy. things you can use around the house. You have chores to do. Get in the mindset, what can I do to involve my children in the chores? And you're going to see, once you start kind of opening your mind to noticing that there's kind of learning everywhere, all the different ways that you're going to bring learning into your day. Well, for one thing, you're making the bed, let's say. Well, cooking is an easy one, but let's say you're making the bed. You just tucked in 3 corners of your bed sheet on the fitted sheet, and now you've got that 4th corner. And what happens with that 4th corner when you lift it up and pull it down to put it under? You get this nice, big, beautiful bubble. And if your children have ever seen you do that, what do they want to do? Well, they want to jump on that bubble or pounce their bodies flat onto that bubble. And then what happens? It deflates. There's so much science around your house. There's physics in there. And then they may want to do it again and again and again, and maybe they'll start saying, hey, my bubble, let me see how high I make my bubble go higher than yours, and count how long it takes for that bubble to deflate. And all these activities, it's so easy to add learning to it, because then you toss a measuring tape in the picture, and what happens? Then they're measuring their bubble. They're counting how long it takes to go up and down. They're measuring it. You can start looking things up online about air and why the bubble's doing that. And with these kind of activities, this kind of brain work, you might start noticing they're going to probably take that tape measure, and once they're done measuring that, they may just be now measuring everything all around the house. So it's an automatic lead into lots of learning. And this is the mindset when you're not at the assignment part of it, that, and you're freaking out that they're not learning. They're probably doing a lot more learning than you realize. And it'll free them up to go back to the assignments too, because their bodies will be more relaxed. I think I'll give you one more, because I do love this one. And I was just talking to another parent about it yesterday that did this. Chairs. Grab a bunch of chairs, put them out, and let that chair become a vehicle of any kind. Train, and you'll notice probably a lot of your children do this anyway on their own. So you can let the children choose where they're going to want to go in this vehicle, and especially now we can't go anyplace. Let them go wherever they want to go. In this particular case, I was speaking to a mom who I'd given this to before, and she said they missed the park. They wanted to go to the park. So it was perfect. They got in their car and they drove to the park, and they got out of the car, and then they pretended they were on a swing. They made this into a swing. They made that into a slide. And then the hilarious part is since they wanted to ride their bikes, they got down on the ground on their backs, and they were riding their bikes, their legs like this, you know, just like this, riding their bikes, and their feet went up against each other, and they were riding bikes with their feet up against each other. And then you can go to the North Pole, the South Pole. You go to the Grand Canyon, and then go on a virtual tour. Go to Google and actually tour these places on the ground. And now there is virtual field trips. You just went to this, you know, the Grand Canyon in your pretend vehicle. Go on a virtual field trip to the Grand Canyon. So these are other alternative ways to learn, or to add to what's going on with the school on days where you feel like you want them to be learning, but they're just too burnt out to be doing, or too stressed out to be sitting still. Their bodies won't be confined in that moment. And then you can come back to it. So I want to now throw a few things your way for the olders. By the way, especially if this goes on for very long, you may see the olders joining in some of the younger children's things, and they may do things that they weren't doing before if they stay home long enough. But in general terms, I think if you can get them talking about things, it would be very, very useful. Like you might want to ask them, what are you missing about your life? You know, if it's their friends, or if it's activities that they were doing. And some of them may really be missing school right now. Not all of them. Some of them will be rooting, and others will be missing various parts of school. And allow them to talk about what they're missing, and then let them brainstorm ways to, are there ways from home that they can gain back any part of those things that they're missing, you know, things like that. And also, heck, let them raid your craft box. I mean, let them raid the things. Don't, you know, like just give it all to them and say, do whatever you want. Let them raid the toolbox. Let them raid your craft or sewing or whatever things you have around the house that they go to, and they don't usually have time to do it. Let them just completely just go there for as long as they want to. My daughter, the homeschooled of my three, is working up in Seattle. She works with youth right now. And we've been talking a lot about, she's works with at-risk youths, and she's been talking a lot about what they are grappling with in their teens. Some of them in their senior years, not going to prom. So these kids came up with, she said the hardest thing for them was not so much the prom itself, but they bought a dress, or they bought this, you know, tux or whatever they bought, and they don't get to wear this thing that they bought. So the children got together, and they're not doing a prom, but one of them is going to play music, and they're going to wear their clothing on this Zoom meetup. So, you know, helping them, this social so important for them at this age, helping them find safe ways to stay social like we're doing right now, is going to be really important for them. And anytime you do have the opportunity for that critical thinking in their environment, you know, go there. So I want to just real briefly also, and while I'm talking about all this, I appreciate that one person that I might have missed other things people said because I've been busy talking. Feel free to share with each other things that have happened in your house with the various ages that you've noticed that are working. Share those things with each other so that you can read what each other is saying, because you're going to have lots of moments where it's not working, and share that too. But definitely also share what is working, so you can all help each other through this, because everybody's going to think of different things. Yeah, what's working in your household? So briefly, Paula earlier talked about passion, your child's passion, and with all the children, and especially the older ones and younger ones, a great way to learn is through what their passion is. And a passion will automatically bring all the subjects into their learning. My daughter at 6, let's say, was very interested in dogs. I mean, so she read, researched, she knew everything, how to feed a dog. She learned nutrition, she learned height, size, weight, personality, behavior. And through that, she was doing math. She found ways to write. She found ways to read. She did some science. So always with a passion, no matter what it is, you're going to already bring all the subjects into it. Yeah. Thank you for your input. And I just want to say one final thing before getting into the resources with you all and the questions. It's also okay to do nothing, just to relax and do nothing, and give yourselves and the children permission to completely decompress, vegetate, sleep longer. Everybody's under a lot of stress right now. And to try to, you know, give yourself permission to know it's absolutely 100% okay to not have this figured out. It's okay to have a day where everything just went wrong. You couldn't make anything happen the way you wanted it to. And everybody's burnt out, stressed out. You're not failures. You're not failures. I want everybody in this room, and I can't even see you all, to just take yourself off the hook. I mean, you are all like incredible, I'm sure, and wanting the best for your children for sure. And this crazy time is not going to, they'll still go to college if that was where they were headed. They're still going to go there. There may be little detours and there may be different routes. I don't know how this will change the way, but it isn't going to change where they're headed. It just might give them some new adventures along the way. So decompress is okay. Popcorn in a movie, or that favorite junk thing on TV that, you know, you don't give yourself permission to watch. This is all okay.
Great. Thank you, Dinal. What a great message. It's okay. Like it's okay, even it's okay not to be okay. So
Yeah,
to speak, right?
right.
When
Yeah.
things are not okay, that's okay too. Like, oh my gosh. So I'm loving your message, because it's like we are not connected physically, but I felt this collective like, really? Yeah, it is okay. And you know what? You all, as well as the children, they have years and years and years, kind of depending on the age of your child, but they have oftentimes chronic stress. I work with kids who are so anxious and stressed out going to school. They have tummy aches, they have headaches, they have all these things going on. So, you know, it's okay for them to have a break from this all, and it's okay just to kind of, yeah, sit down on the couch and watch a movie, for example. So really that letting go of that pressure of yourself, and communicating with the teachers too. Like I'm all for like advocating for your child and for your family for what works and what doesn't work. So hopefully everybody's hearing that message. I'm going to jump in here to the chat and see, Janelle, should we take some questions, and then we'll share all the resources you have at the end?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, great. I saw one question here about screen time. So, you know, my child, that's the only thing they want to do is play games and screen time. So what advice or some suggestions do you have for that?
Okay, I know screen time is, even when I'm at like the homeschool conferences and we're talking about things, this is a big one for everybody. Um, from a brain's perspective, there is some learning that goes on there. It's more like two-dimensional learning rather than whole brain learning, but I think that what might happen, and it might not happen this way, every child is different, but that is what a lot of people want to do to escape right now, especially if that's their escape go-to. They may want to do more of that right now. And maybe to some degree, it's okay to do a little bit more of that right now while we're going through all of this. And also by creating environments that kind of pull them away. It's harder when they're in their teens. They're going to do what they're going to do. And you know, like sometimes it really is out of control unless you're wanting to go to battle with them and you have to pick and choose your battles kind of thing. But also I find that in times like these where your kids are pushing you away the most, they kind of also need you the most, especially in their teens. And that's where that passion might come in handy. So like I would say, it's okay, the screen time, but is there also a passion they have of any kind that can now be fostered a little bit, and that might pull them out of it some. But that's their go-to right now. And maybe you can be a little more forgiving of it right now, and get creative with them. Are there, you know, what ways will they interact with you? Because you are more who they're interacting with now than their peers. And although maybe they're finding more ways on, like we're doing here on Zoom, are there ways they can connect with their peers on Zoom? Are there ways that they can help you in the house more? You know, is somebody good at something in the house, a parent that the child actually can help you fix something, build something? You know, try to get a connection going with them more. But yeah, that's a big one. And I think every parent has to figure out for themselves what their comfort level is with that topic. From a brain perspective,
Right.
it's like two-dimensional learning.
Right, right. So yeah, it's a huge question, and you know there is no clear-cut answer. I think that's the answer, is there's no like, okay, this is what you do every time.
Yeah.
But it really is kind of like what Janelle said, is to be a little bit flexible with that. So allowing like those boundaries, like especially with teenagers. So yeah, maybe they're gonna get a little bit more time, but at the same time, not just leaving them just to do that, but also finding their passion, maybe even sitting down and let's write a list of things that you're interested in, and then how can we make this happen? Like how can you do a project around that? Like I love the idea that what you shared, Dinelle, that you know your daughter was interested in dogs, and then it ended up being this huge big project for her to research. And kids will get away from the screen when they have this other anchor. They have this anchor in their interest and in their passion that they can do. And so kind of balancing that out. So yeah, no clear-cut answers, but setting some boundaries around that, but at the same time also figuring out how can you engage them in some family activities and things in the household. So let me take a couple other questions here. So somebody said, my kids are 8 and 11. Yesterday, I had my daughter take all the books off the shelf and count them. And then she wanted to organize them in colors and then sizes and kept her busy for 2 hours. I love that. That's great. Because kids actually kids at that age and even younger children, like when they are like 5 and 6, they have these, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but developmentally they have a desire for order and organization because their brain is really chaotic. So then any order and organization in their environment is going to help them kind of organize the brain better. Like, you know, younger kids, they love to categorize things, you know, put them in colors, in groups of things. So that's a great activity to adapt maybe into some other things too. Let me see what else.
Paul, I saw something there about somebody asking about consequences. Did you see that one? I wouldn't mind answering.
Yeah, go for that one. Yes, go for that. I think that's a good one.
It flashed by me and I didn't really get to see the whole thing.
Okay, let me try to find it for you.
I think this might be a good one for everybody to kind of think about together, everybody kind of answer each other with this one, because I think everybody has the same question also. Like, do you give consequences when they don't do what's expected or something? Whoever wrote that, I'm sorry, I don't have it memorized, but.
Whoever wrote that, if you're still here, can you unmute yourself and let us know what your question was?
Yeah.
Are you still here? Hello? Somebody had a question about consequences. Okay. So let's just talk about that. I can't find it either, but like, yeah, so how do we deal with consequences? Like, let's say, like we talked about, you know, sometimes the kids get really oppositional and defiant. They don't want to do their work. They might say mean things, you know, things like that. So what is your perspective on consequences and punishments?
Well, for me, I'm not a big consequence person, and I'm not putting it down for another family. I want to make really clear that I believe personally that there's more than one way to eat, sleep, parent. And I can tell you what works for me and my family, and it may not work for yours. So I don't want you to feel judged if you don't do it my way. I don't use consequences because I think life has those anyway. I might use discussion. And I've also found that with learning, particularly it's what my goal is, and my goal is for them to learn. When I give them consequences, they hate learning like that much more. It becomes about like this hate of this thing they have to do. So for me, it just doesn't work. You know, it still comes down to the question, well, what do you do to get them to do what you want them to do? And that's a whole nother subject. But on the thing of consequences, it's individual. It doesn't work personally for me. So that isn't the way that I handle things when things don't, you know, when I want them to do something.
Right. And, you know, I'm of the same school of thought. And there are, like Danelle, you said so well, that natural consequences are embedded in life. Like, we don't have to, like so many parents end up feeling like, oh, I have to be the police and I have to do this, I have to do that. And it is actually unnecessary. These natural consequences are embedded in life, and that as parents, as adults involved in the lives of children, we can bring awareness and we can bring discussions around what the natural consequence was. Like, let's say you take, somebody takes your sister's toy, or maybe hits a sibling. There's a whole discussion around this that can happen in terms of what the natural consequence was. So really taking a moment to be almost like this coach, not lecturing, but being a coach and helping the child think for themselves in terms of like, yeah, what really happened here? That was a great one. I have another one I saw in the chat. this is for more like a teenager, is that can't get the kid out of bed, just sleeping, and it's 2 o'clock, and they are barely getting up. So I've been hearing this a lot too, like teenagers not getting up until 2 o'clock or 5 p.m. even, and then they just come out and they eat and they go back to their room. So yeah, what ideas do you have for that one?
Well, I want to say that from a perspective, like there are families who were in the high school years, they schooled traditionally all through till high school, and then something was happening in high school where the parents didn't want them to be there for some reason, and they brought them home. And I will tell you this, if you talk to most of these parents, you will see that when they first come back, that's what they want to do. They want to sleep. And well, teenagers want to sleep more anyway. That is part of their brain growth. They need more sleep. But I'm going to say it's not that unusual. Of course, you have to always be watching for signs of depression with kids, but it's not that unusual for them to want to sleep. They're going through a lot right now. And, you can let it maybe go on for a few days and then do some things with the environment where you can maybe get them to help you do something around the house. Maybe you need them. A lot of kids really thrive on being needed a little bit. Hey, can you help me do something? I've got all this going on. They're at an age where, they can handle some responsibility, and they might like roll their eyes, or they might really feel good about feeling valued and jumping in. But I do want to say, it doesn't surprise me. And they may need some days at least like that. Maybe give them permission to have a certain amount of days where, man, I'm just going to stay in bed today. I can't think of another thing. All I want to do is sleep. And then see if you can coax them out with things that doesn't add pressure to their life right now. Because clearly if they're sleeping like that, they're under a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I'm checked out right now. And it makes perfect sense. They can't figure out, like a lot of these teenagers, think about it. This was their year to graduate. That transitional moment of throwing, the hat in the air, and all these 18 years of everything they worked so dang hard for, and they couldn't wait to be over, and they don't even get that transitional moment. So yeah, be mindful of it turning into, like depression. Allow a little more of that, and get creative with making them feel a part of the family right now in ways that they can feel useful in the family, because this is what they're most connected with at the moment.
Right. Yes. And so teenagers, like a lot of kids, are going through that grief, like you said. They're going through grief. It's really hard for especially teenagers. Developmentally, it's the time of their lives when they are developing their identity, and they are developing it through connection with their peer group, and the peer group is so important. So now they don't have that outlet anymore. They don't have access to that. So it's really, really difficult for them. So seeing some signs of grief actually is, grief is sadness, it's fatigue, it's not being motivated. So those would be quite normal things to see in teenagers. However, I think that was a really good point, Dinelle, too, that we would not want this to develop into depression. So again, going back to what I hear Dinelle say a lot is the environment, how we set up the environment for the child, making them feel like they belong to the family, and help them somehow feel like they are part of it. The other thing you can do with teenagers, and I'll just kind of piggyback and add to this, Dinelle, is, have a discussion with them, like, kind of like, is this working for you? Like, is this how you want to spend your days? In a very, like, kind way, not in a judgmental way, but just being curious, like, I just noticed you got up at 5 o'clock. Like, is this something you want? And maybe you do, maybe you don't. What are the pros and cons? So you help them think about that for themselves, and really highlight the dissonance of, like, well, I want to do this, so I want to be here, but this is what I'm doing. And then, so what are the solutions for you to be where you want to be? And so with teenagers, you can already start having these sort of conversations as well.
I love that.
Yeah, Great. Let me look at the time. Other than going over the resources, Danelle, did you have anything else that you wanted to share with the group?
I think that the resources will sum it up, and mostly I'm going to be emailing, I guess, you the resources to give to them, or getting this resources out to them in an email, or.
Yes. Do you have them available right now? We could also drop them in the chat.
Yeah, they are in my I can get to them, but since I've never any presentations I've done before have always been in person, or I've handed
Yeah.
so this is my first time of doing it this way.
Yeah.
So I would have to, if I left the room to go to my place where I keep those things, I don't know how that would all work out.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I will email those. So we're going to talk about the resources, what they are and how they can help you. And then, yeah, and then I will email them to everybody. So Danelle, you can just like email them to me, and then I will email them to everybody. So yeah, what do you have in mind in terms of resources?
Just really, I'm going to be kind of really brief with the resources, and just say basically each of the families that are here, or that, you know, you might work with Paula, as you know, everybody's situation's different. So knowing what your situation is and just getting on Google and finding any homeschool groups in your neighborhood and in your city, because I don't know if everybody's even in my city here. Plunk in, I work full time and I'm homeschooling. People that have already been doing this even before this situation have really like run down this road, and they've accumulated so much information that then you don't have to recreate a wheel that's already there. So first of all, if you have time and energy, Google, you know, homeschool working families or whatever your situation is, and find what's local to you. And then I'm going to give you other resources like the virtual field trips. There's lots of science and math, and I've narrowed it down to the ones that I know are tried and true from people that have been using these things for a long time, because there's so much out there. So I've kind of narrowed it down to some of the ones that I know are good. And Brain Pop, I'm going to give you like about a handful or two, like 5 to 10. I can't remember how many are in my thing. But I'm just going to show you these books, but I'll also write them down. And I don't know how this works, showing things in the screen, but this is such a...
Yeah, we see it.
Can you see it backwards though, right?
No, we see it the right way. So Smart Moves.
This is like an excellent book. I love this book. It's called Smart Moves, Why Learning is Not All in Your Head, by Carla Hannaford, PhD. I think she's a, what is she? She is a neurophysiologist. She does a lot of brain work, so she understands learning in the brain. And it's just a fantastic book if you just want to understand the brain when it learns. And here's another one called Teaching with the Brain in Mind by Eric Jensen. And the other ones I will get, Paula will, I'm grateful, will send to you.
Yes, great. Wow, that was so much good information. That's incredible. And then, Danelle, can people also get in touch with you? Yes. If they have questions afterwards, maybe email you, or what would be the best way for people to get
yeah, I will put my phone number in the chat right now, and my email.
Okay.
Great. And then when you give them the resources, it can be in there too.
Okay, I will include it in there too, but write it from the chat. Danelle is going to put her phone number. Thank you for your generosity and your support for parents. And then she's going to also put her email there, and you can also find those in the email that will be going out to everybody. There it is.
Let me get my phone number in there too.
Okay, great. So hopefully you got some good information here and some ideas how to move forward with this homeschooling. We are in this for the long haul. There's a lot of people out there like Danelle, myself, and others who are just here to support parents in any way that we can, and also for parents to support each other. That's kind of like the times right now, is to reach out and get support, get the information, and then be creative with this, because it's like Danelle said, the household is full of math and science and geometry, right? And all these things. So looking around the household through different lenses, through different eyes. And the nice thing is that kids are naturally so creative that when you just kind of let them go, like Danelle said, like let them, the older kids, let them go with the toolbox and figure out what they're going to do when this obstacle course is. And so really fostering that creativity, and then like you don't have to come up with it all by yourself. They actually will. And then it's directed, the learning is directed by the child, which is so powerful. And then the last thing I want to really highlight is to be forgiving to yourself, being kind, taking off the pressure. Like Danelle shared with us, the brain we don't learn anything when we are stressed out. So if there ever is stress in the family, there's arguments, fighting, whatever it is, it's time to take a break. And it's time to do a dance party, time to play with balloons, time to do messy art,
Right.
do messy art, right? Anything like that.
Right.
To just kind of shift from that mode of stress. So great, we are going to finish with that. We are right at 60 minutes right now, but I have recorded this, so it will be available to be viewed afterwards in case you want to review, and then I'll be sharing this with other parents as well. Don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Danelle and look for the emails, and yeah, you'll get through this. Sometimes just some positive encouragement and positive positive words towards yourself can be extremely helpful as well.
Yes. Thank you so much, Paula, for inviting me to do this. I'm very grateful to be here, and it was a pleasure to meet you all briefly. And I just wish everybody safety and wellness, please, through this difficult time.
Thank you, Danelle. I am so excited. When we talked about this, I'm like, we've been talking about doing a project together for some time, and now it just happened naturally. And you have so much to offer, so much. And thank you for your generosity and just sharing your experience and expertise. I really, really appreciate that. Okay. So we'll end with that. Everybody, you can unmute yourself and say bye-bye.
Bye.
Everyone, bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.